Welcome back. Let us continue with our discussion with the second module, that is diversity in organizations. In the previous lecture, we discussed about diversity in terms of definition, in terms of different aspects or components of diversity based on deep level and surface level diversity, including biographical or demographic characteristics. Today, we will continue the same discussion from a different point of view in terms of diversity management and how organizations are making rigorous efforts to implement various diversity management strategies to foster inclusion and equity. But what exactly it means? If we are talking about this major term, that is implementing diversity management strategies, what does it entail? Actually, it entails not only about some strategies, but with a particular objective to foster inclusion of employees who come from different backgrounds. Coming back to the same basic question, that this different or diverse background includes lot of things, not only about an individual's geographical background, biographical or demographical background, based on disabilities. It can be about diversity in terms of knowledge, skills and abilities. People come with different personas and how they tend to include themselves as part of the organization, as part of the group or as part of the team. When so much inclusion is fostered, then definitely different skills or pool of talent gets into the structure, gets into the system, and that brings more efficiency and effectiveness in the overall outcome of the functioning of the organization. So, therefore, we can define diversity management refers to organizational actions that aim to promote greater inclusion of employees from different backgrounds into an organization structure through specific policies and programs. Now, here organization structure means that how every individual as an employee has an equal chance to be part of the organization at every hierarchy or in every task that has been assigned or to that an individual deserves to perform that task in the organization. Therefore, organizations are adopting diversity management strategies as a response to the growing diversity of the workforce around the world. And why it has become so imperative that these strategies should be included? Because of globalization, because of global marketplace. It is not confined to only one country or one continent. It has been delimited, it has grown out of the boundaries, or every country has pushed the boundaries to capture the market. And to capture the market, that includes the role of specific HR to bring in more people from different backgrounds, diverse areas and specializations. Through these programs, managers make employees more aware of and sensitive to the needs and differences of others. Definitely, when diverse workforce is there, conflicts are there is little or less chances of acceptability of the person who is from different background, and how people or employees are being sensitized through these programs to accept or welcome that diversity and include it as part of the organization. So, what are the types of diversity management? It is not only management as a one general term, it has some different aspects also, whether we are diversifying at national level or international level. It has some weightage, that in what manner we are trying to diversify. The following are the two types of diversity management. The first is international diversity management and the other is cross national diversity management. Now, international diversity management, this refers to managing a workforce that comprises citizens or immigrants in a single national context. Diversity programs focus on providing employment opportunities to minority groups or recent immigrants. For example, a French company may implement policies and programs with the aim of improving sensitivity and providing employment to minority ethnic groups in the country. It is within the country itself, but at international level, that how minority groups which has more cultural or tribal background and how they also become part of that group or organization, while giving them more chances to be part of the organization. Now, why minority groups specifically? Because they are the most disadvantaged communities in the country, and how they tend to come forward, become part of the organization structure. This is international diversity management. This why international? Because such kind of policies are being implemented in every country, and the basic aim is not only as definitely inclusion, but also to pool all the talent which is existing in every corner of the country, and how people tend to come together to exhibit that talent. So, this is something where the workforce is being managed based on the immigrants or citizens in a single national context. For example, Australia or even our particular country India, we have different diverse backgrounds, and how every background has got the opportunity to become part of any organization, because they have also right to educate, to become professionally skilled, and then exhibit those skills and representing their communities. This is international diversity management. The other is cross national diversity management. Cross national diversity or international diversity management refers to managing a workforce that comprises citizens from different countries. It may also involve immigrants from different countries who are seeking employment. It is about international and cross national. It can be from one country to another or from one state to another, where there is geographical diversity, where there is cultural diversity, and how people tend to shift from one country to another, experiencing major cultural shocks based on norms, based on values, based on language, how that culture chaos is being overcome. Under such circumstances, managers are being trained, they are being sensitized that how to give enough space to the new immigrants in the organization and tend to implement those strategies. For example, any US based company with branches in Canada, Korea or China, the company will establish diversity programs and policies that apply in its own parent US company, and they also tend to implement the same policies and procedures in other countries as well. That means, they have their regional or country offices across the world, and how they tend to float similar policies and procedures of their own company. But at the same time, there is a clash also, because when we are floating policy of any parent company in another country, then legislation also comes into force, and how that conflict is been resolved while finding a balance or patching up those differences, then implement those strategies. So, these are the two type of management strategies. So, the main challenge of cross national diversity management is that the parent company must consider the legislative and cultural laws in the host countries as it operates in, and depending on where the employee lives. So, this calls for more intensive interventions, that how diversity, equity and inclusion can be fostered in any host country to welcome and to include more people with different backgrounds. Next comes, what are those diversity management strategies? There can be n number of strategies, but OB professionals have identified some major strategies, and under those strategies come small issues that has to be considered on the base of planning. The first is attracting, selecting, developing and retaining diverse employees, diversity in groups, expatriate adjustment and effective diversity programs. So, we will go one by one in discussing about every strategy. So, the first strategy is attracting, selecting, developing and retaining diverse employees. This includes to target recruiting messages to specific demographic groups or underrepresented or minority groups, or which are disadvantaged groups in the society, and how those groups are being targeted by publishing employment opportunities or spreading employment opportunities through publications, especially within those communities. Now, such type of publication is very beneficial for women workforce as well, where they have more opportunities to come forward and take jobs, where they have more chance to represent their group. So, this means placing advertisements in publications geared towards specific demographic groups, and then recruiting those people from those backgrounds at college, universities and other institutions with significant number of unrepresentative minorities, and forming partnerships with associations. Now, advertisements also depict a group of diverse employees are seen more attractive to women and racial ethnic minorities, because that come into their attention and then only they get attracted. since they are the deprived or underprivileged societies, they have less exposure to media, they have less exposure to social interactions, and they find difficulty from where to find out any opportunity. But through advertisements or publications, they actually they are attracted to those advertisements and then finally find any opportunity to represent their group. And under such circumstances, women find these kind of jobs more attractive, which probably why most organizations depict workforce diversity prominently in their recruitment materials. At the same time, diversity advertisements also fail to show women and minorities in positions of organizational leadership, send a negative message about the diversity climate at an organization. Definitely, when the underrepresented communities do not tend to get these kind of opportunities, then especially women fail to represent these communities at higher positions. The other is ensuring a bias free hiring process. If it is about attraction through publication, then another is that hiring the process or selecting people based on bias free hiring process, where managers use a well defined protocol for assessing applicant talent and the organizations clearly prioritize non-discrimination policies. Qualifications become far more important determining who gets hired than demographic characteristics. Now, this is another aspect. If we are talking about attracting employees from underrepresented groups or minority groups, then there is another aspect is hiring, where the process is transparent, where even the demographic aspects are also not being considered. Only an individual's competency based on the qualification is only the key role to hire any employee. That means bias free employment hiring process. The other is to create a workplace that is more inclusive for women. Why exclusive for women? Although it has to be inclusive for women, but exclusively for women here means that since women are taking care of domains that is personal and professional, then they have a very intermittent roots in their life. That is, sometimes they are taking break and sometimes they are off the work. Under such circumstances, they need to have workplaces or environment where there is more flexibility and at the same time they are also working for the organization. So, this includes taking time out, working reduced hours, part time or flexi time for multiple reasons. So, intermittent route is the most important factor when it comes to inclusion of women in workplaces through diversity management strategies. Organizations have adopted approaches for attracting, retaining and developing women at various stages in their career life cycle, in addition to having women friendly policies and practices. Now, here women friendly policies and practices means to attract more female employees. There are different facilities that are being offered to women employees at workplaces such as daycare or creches, where women can come to their offices with their kids. They can send their kids to the creche or daycare within the organization's premises and they are set free to work for the organization, or flexible schedules or flexi time, where they can on and off take break and come up with their work. Now, under such a kind of climate or environment, women are more motivated and they are more attracted to work with such organizations. This is one strategy. The other is offer an employee assistance program for guidance with problem solving, decision making and combating emotional and psychological barriers to personal growth. This is absolutely a psychological aspect that has to be handled by the organizations. When there is more diversity and inclusion is being fostered, this becomes very significant for the organizations to consider about the personal growth of every employee. Now, here personal growth is something that they think about their own personal professional goals and find their work to be very meaningful. The more they experience the work meaningful, the more they experience satisfaction that they are offering not only to the organization, but they are offering to the society as well. That empowers them to take better decisions and resolve problems more amicably or in a very cordial manner. So, this is another aspect. Now, when these kind of environment is prevailing in any organization, this leads to more attraction and retention of employees, and that too diverse employees. So, there are evidence that shows transformational leaders who emphasize on higher order goals and values in their leadership styles are more effective in managing diverse teams. So, this is very important, that not only just in a very transactional manner we are just hiring people from diverse group, how they have to be retained by understanding their psychology at work, that will add more power in the retaining process. The other aspect is diversity in groups. Most contemporary workplaces require extensive work in group settings. This includes demographic diversity, which includes gender, race and ethnicity. But it does not end here. Diversity in groups also exists based on talent, based on competency, based on their intelligence, based on their persona, for example, conscientiousness, to what extent they are more sincere contributing to the team or to the task, and to what extent they are more extending help without getting any formal recognition to the organization. So, on the other hand, teams of individuals who are highly intelligent, conscious and interested in working in team settings are more effective. Therefore, diversity on these variables should also be emphasized. On these variables means intelligence, consciousness or personality. So, diversity on these variables is likely to be a bad thing, but it makes little sense to try the form teams that mix in members who are lower in intelligence, conscientiousness and uninterested in teamwork. Imagine people in the team are from diverse backgrounds, culturally diverse background, biographically diverse background, but they are unable to maintain interpersonal relationship or they do not have that competence. Then in such circumstances the organization will fail to meet the objective. So, diversity in terms of intelligence, in terms of personality, in terms of conscientiousness also plays very important role when it comes to maintaining diversity in groups. In other cases, differences can be strength. Groups of individuals with different types of expertise and education are more effective than homogeneous groups. That is very obvious. There are more exchange of ideas, there is more openness to accept novelty in the ideas and implement those novelty for appropriate execution of the task. So, diversity in form of education, diversity in form of experience or expertise plays very important role and forms a strength of that group. Similarly, a group made entirely of assertive people who want to be in charge or a group whose members all prefer to follow the lead of others will be less effective than a group that mixes leaders and followers. So, here the behavioral component has also been taken care of when we are talking about diversity management strategy, that it is not only about diversity based on culture or language, it is more about individuals' behavior, that how and to what extent they are consistent or distinctive in responding to the situations in a very collective manner. And groups of diverse individuals will be much more effective if leaders can show how members have a common interest in the group success. The other is expatriate adjustment. Organizations require technical and managerial skills not available locally and thus aims to provide career and leadership development opportunities to its employees. But how? Definitely there has to be transfer of knowledge. When one organization locally cannot suffice the functioning of the organization based on the existent knowledge of its employees, then they have to look beyond the organization, and that requires hiring or transferring employees for procuring more knowledge and experience for the objective of the organization. Therefore, to ensure knowledge transfer and fulfill specific project needs, employees experience moving to a different country and adjusting to its new cultural, interactive and work related norms is a major undertaking for both the expatriate. Now, what happens when any organization comes to a decision making that employees need to be transferred to another country to gain more experience or learning of a particular technology, then it becomes more challenging. Why? Because challenging at both the end, the employee who is getting transferred to the new country and the host country as well. It is not that only the employee who is being transferred will experience some kind of shock, even the host country will also experience a similar shock because the employee is from a different culture. So, this is more challenging, that how expatriate adjustment will take place and forms a major concern when we talk about diversity management strategies. So, how this adjustment will be made? That means both the expatriate, that is the employee on international assignment, and the host country nationals. So, if not handled properly, poor adjustment can result in employee dissatisfaction, poor performance, prejudice and misunderstanding. Now, even that employee who is being transferred to the new country or continent, then he has to face prejudice or stereotypical discrimination. But this becomes the foremost duty and concern of the host country to take care of the particular employee who has come to that country, that to what extent employees of that organization do not discriminate him. Under this situation, the role of the host country is more important based on the policies to welcome and enhance inclusiveness. If it is not there, this leads to dissatisfaction, this leads to poor learning and performances and prejudicial attitudes. Several factors can be targeted to ensure that the adjustment process goes smoothly. And how? Just now I said that both the expatriate and the host country have to take care of each other, because both will experience culture shock, but how it has to be done? The first is giving some vibes of feeling of empowerment along with motivation to interact with those of other cultures, leading to increased adjustment, satisfaction and reduced intentions to leave prematurely. If there is no adjustment, there is in tendency to leave the organization of that host country as soon as possible. But if the host country makes efforts to increase more interaction among employees, then it tends to enhance the level of satisfaction and increase the level of motivation for the employee. The other is, it is assumed that adjustment tends to increase over time in a curvilinear fashion for the expatriate, those with previous culture specific work experience. A person who has been transferred from one country to another will find less difficulty to make any kind of expatriate adjustments. The more the person is new to any transfer, the more the person will find difficulty in adjusting with that cultural shocks and norms. Rather, the person who has more exposure to culturally different and diverse countries, the more he is satisfied and able to adjust. This also tends to lead to increased esteem and self-efficacy and tend to adjust and be promoted more quickly. The other is, several other factors work in concert to affect different forms of adjustment, including language ability, relational skills, role clarity, autonomy, organizational support and familial support. It is not only about just meeting the objective of the organization once you are being transferred to another country. When we are interacting in that new country or in the host country, then there are some other issues that come up. Now, at the social level also, when people tend to interact, the more they are adjusting with the new country, with the new norms or values or cultures, the poor person is able to generate social capital and relational capital. He is more standing. He has more self-esteem, he earns more self-respect and efficacy. He evolves with better self-efficacy and tend to have better adjustment with the employees. Maybe the family has also accompanied that person and the family also tends to get adjusted with the same environment. This increases motivation and performance. These studies suggest that organizations should select employees for international assignments who are capable of adjusting quickly and then ensure that they have the support they need for their assignment. Thus, by hiring individuals with diverse skills and knowledge, companies can significantly enhance the quality of services they deliver to a global client base. The other is effective diversity programs. They have certain distinct components that every organization tends to establish and follow and implement. The first is that organizations teach managers about the legal framework for equal employment opportunities and encourage fair treatment of all people regardless of their demographic characteristics. This is the most important and common and foremost component of the effective diversity program, where equal employment opportunity is implemented and it is being worked for every individual who has applied for the job, irrespective of gender, race, caste, creed, religion or any ethnicity. Every individual has the equal right to apply for the job and every application has to be considered equally. The other is that organizations teach managers how a diverse workforce is better able to serve a diverse market of customers and clients. This is so obvious that when a workforce is diverse, then there is more customer client, there is more capturing of the market, because people come with different kind of experiences, with cultural experiences, and how they tend to use those experiences to bring more novelty in capturing the market or in sales of the product, or how the product has to be launched, but how people of a particular culture or community will respond to that product. All these experiences will add more diversity and more success for the organization. The other is that organizations foster personal development practices that bring out the skills and abilities of all workers. Acknowledging how differences in perspective can be valuable way to improve performance for everyone. Definitely diverse group members are there. They also have diverse experiences. That experience in long run becomes an expertise. When different or diverse expertise are coming together or being pooled together by the organization, this not only leads to organizational development, it actually leads to personal development as well, because there is more attitude modification for good and there is more change in the behavior. The other is, regardless of race or gender, people are generally in favor of diversity oriented programs, including affirmative action programs, to increase the representation of minority groups and to ensure that everyone has fair opportunity to show their skills and abilities. Initially it was equal employment opportunity. Here it is affirmative action programs, where minority groups are being encouraged to represent their groups, come forward, take up the job and take more leadership positions and become part of the organizational structure. Organizational leaders should examine their workforce to determine whether target groups have been underutilized. If groups of employees are not proportionally represented in top management, managers should look for any hidden barriers to advancement. For example, glass ceiling effect, where female workers are being inhibited, deliberately inhibited to take up the higher positions. But yes, gradually every organization is breaking these glasses and more women are taking up higher or top management positions. Even in countries, presidential positions are being taken by female employees. So, this adds a better diversity strategy to foster more inclusiveness at work. Managers play a crucial role in enhancing recruiting practices, making selection systems more transparent and providing training for employees who may have had a sufficient exposure to diversity material in the past. This empowerment can lead to more inclusive workplaces. The more the individual has diverse experience, the more they become empowered, because that experience becomes an expertise, because they understand all the nitty-gritties of how to understand the other community, other groups, other ethnicity, and while not discriminating and including them as part of the process, organizational process, that gives them more power for decision making and become more empowered. And last, the organization should also clearly communicate its policies to employees so that they can understand how and why certain practices are followed. It is about sensitizing employees about the existing policies and procedures, about diversity, equity and inclusion, and not following any policy can lead to any legal action. Eighth is, research also indicates that a tailored approach will be needed for international organizations. Now, here tailored approach means that more strategy has to be formed, has to be tailored, where multinational companies come forward for more transparency and more inclusion of people from different corners of the world. For example, in a case study of a French company Transco, it was found that it was possible to develop a consistent global philosophy for diversity management. However, differences in legal and cultural factors across nations forced the company to develop unique policies to match the cultural and legal frameworks of each country in which it is operated. We started the same discussion in the first instance only and we are ending up with the same. The point is that every time when we are talking about diversity, legal aspect has to be considered, and these days every organization is not only considering diversity at national level, even at international or cross national level, they consider every policy backed by legal notions. It is not what they have thought of and they will implement. There should be no clash with any other culture legally. That means, what policy is being equally accepted at both the ends, that calls for real diversity management. So, this is about different strategies that we have talked about in terms of attracting, selecting, developing and retaining diverse employees, diversity in groups, expatriate adjustment and effective diversity programs. So, we are through with this second module. We will meet in the next session. Thank you so much.